You're listening to Chuck Cash on the radio.
Stop it. How do, and welcome to the very first Chuck Cash radio show. I'm your host, Chuck Cash, renowned for the invention of crockery, a musical mix of Fenland country rock. But for the next 30 minutes, I'll be your ringmaster and host for a satirical look back at the week's news. Feel free to follow me on Twitter right now, Chuck Cash. Offer advice and friendly criticism, or outrageous rudeness, as we look back at the week's news starting on Monday the 29th of October. The American election campaign has been thrown into turmoil as a third candidate shows his hand. Hurricane Sandy shows up and threatens to disrupt proceedings. Mitt Romney announces he wishes the best for the American people in these stormy times, while quietly hoping that the president screws up the handling of the hurricane. While President Obama wishes the American people all the very best in these stormy times, while quietly hoping the hurricane is at least serious enough to have made it worthwhile taking all the precautions. Well, more on Hurricane Sandy. We have eyes and ears on the ground in Randy Tucker, a resident of New Jersey, who's currently on the line. There is a delay, so bear with me here. I hope you can hear me, Randy. How are things with you now?
Yes, I hear you just fine, Chuck.
You probably didn't hear my first question there. How are things with you?
Yes, I did miss your first question.
Oh, I'm sorry. How are things
now?
now?
That's quite all right.
No, Randy.
It's the delay.
Yeah, yes, there's a delay. It might be easier if you just don't speak until I've finished talking, okay? So, Mr. Tucker in New Jersey, how are things on the ground right now where you are? Mr. Tucker? Are you still there, Randy? Oh, I think we've lost the link. Well,
Chuck,
what's
things are pretty wild right
just
now.
cut him.
Oh, I think they lost the line.
Cut him off.
Hello?
Cut him off. Well, I think we seem to have a down line there. We'll try back in with Randy later in the week. And storm clouds over Britain as the fallout from the Jimmy Savile saga continues. Gary Glitter was held for 10 hours and quizzed over sex allegations. I know quite a bit about sex, but I don't think I could sit through a 10-hour sex quiz. Not without asking the audience, or at least phoning one friend. And for those of you keeping score with your BBC Dirty Dozen bingo card, that's now Jimmy Savile and Gary Glitter ticked off. Stay tuned for further updates.
You're listening to Chuck Cash on the radio.
Stop it. "5 million Britons are living on and below the living wage." We spoke to one self-employed window cleaner, Shammy Leatherhead from Nottingham, to see how he coped in these troubled times. Mr. Leatherhead, you are actually below the living wage, £7.20 an hour. How do you cope in these times? How have you had to cut back? Well, Chuck, I'll not deny it. It's been tougher times. But you've got to make some cutbacks in the household. That's all there is to it. We've now only got a 32-inch flat-screen TV. We had 42 before. It's come as a bit of a shock to the kids, but they got used to it. We've only 3 computers between the 4 of us, so there comes arguments at times on who wants the laptop and who's got the computer or the iPad. And well, we've only had 3 holidays this year, and they're not even fucking Irish anymore by the sounds of it. Well, it's been tough. Anything else? I mean, I've got the kids walking round with their asses hanging out their trousers. Mind you, that's the way they wear them these days, but still, it doesn't look right. It's terrible. And they've only got a few pairs of them each. What else? Jesus, they're having to go to school in standard class on the train. We can't even afford to send them first class. What else? If it wasn't for words like Christ and Jesus, I'd barely be Irish anymore. I can't even afford to do that. Do you have any advice to other small businesses or perhaps self-employed enterprises like yourself? Oh, Christ, I'd say don't bother. Get as much work as you can, cash in hand. How do you say that? No, Christ, no, that's how I survive. If I didn't do the cash and hand jobs, Christ, I wouldn't be able to live on the pittance I get a week. Thanks very much, Shammy Leatherhead. Under pressure, referee Mark Clattenburg has hit back at Chelsea's accusation of racism, saying he never brings colour into the field of football, and if anything, he's the one constantly referred to as the wanker in the black. Tuesday the 30th saw both American presidential candidates cancel their campaign tours. President Obama preferring to be at the crisis centres looking presidential, whereas Republican candidate Mitt Romney preferring to be at the crisis centres looking vaguely useful. Also in the headlines, the 4G internet network is unveiled, to a very small fanfare. 4G should make it possible now for internet access to be vastly improved for literally hundreds of Londoners.
You're listening to Chuck Cash on the radio.
Stop it. And on Wednesday the 31st, normality begins to be restored in New York as the stock exchange reopens. Phew, thank goodness for that. There may be no subway system and minimal transport, 2 million are still without power, thousands are displaced and hundreds are permanently homeless. It'll cost billions to put right, but thank goodness the wealthy will be able to trade equities. One small piece of good news for New Yorkers, all the rats that weren't drowned in the New York subway have now had a nice little bath. And how appropriate on Halloween that the rather ghoulish spectre of Lord Heseltine reads a report suggesting that the economy needs stimulating. David Cameron denies it's a slant on his growth strategy or lack thereof, and the opposition benches accuse David Cameron, if he accepts the report findings, of committing another U-turn. Heseltine, of course, was the Defence Secretary of Margaret Thatcher, a lady notoriously not for turning when her policies were questioned. When David Cameron's policies are quizzed, it seems to take the man 2 years to even acknowledge there's been a question. And in the Commons, David Cameron suffers an embarrassing defeat over the EU budget. His defeat was caused by revolting backbenchers. The revolting frontbench accused Labour of opportunist politics. Well, of course, they're politicians. And now a party political broadcast by the Plebs Party. Vote for me and I will abolish the House of Commons. I will reduce the number of MPs in the Houses of Parliament by 95%, replacing them with regular plebs like you and I. With a little help from companies like Facebook, Camelot, Google and major TV networks, between us we can review all current legislation and or create new British law by referendum, either by post, online, phone or the red button TV option. A panel of plebs would decide upon the priority, and the remaining 5% of MPs would become lobbyists for each proposed issue. It would be we, the people, that made the decisions by simply having a chance to express our opinions. Removing this upper level of bureaucracy would not only help pay off the deficit, it would actually create real jobs and put an end to the dangerous, power-grabbing game that has become party politics. If the Olympics and the Paralympics showed us anything, it's that deep down, when we come together as a nation, the great British public are pretty decent folk, and quite sensible. In their reaction to George Osborne, we all saw that. Party politics has become the hindrance that stops social development in this country. Vote plebs, the people logic ending bullshit party. That was a party political broadcast by the Plebs Party. Thursday saw November and the end of Stoptober, so for any of you smokers who gave up during the month of Stoptober, you can light up now. It was trick-or-treat last night and Halloween, and on a personal note we managed to score 31 knocks at the door. However, numbers were down due to poor weather. Our knocks at the door increased once we'd removed the cigar and the blonde wig from the pumpkin in the window. Ouch! Comet come down to Earth with a bump. On November the 1st, Comet announced a pre-tax loss of £35 million for last year. Comet threatened to go into administration. Well, maybe administration would be a better industry than the electrical goods ones, where they seem to have crashed and burned. The virtual high street on the internet has overtaken them, whereas the actual high street remains virtually empty.
You're listening to Chuck Cash on the radio.
Stop it. Jimmy Savile's estate had frozen assets estimated at £4 million in anticipation of upcoming legal suits. Many have long called for Savile's assets to be frozen, his valuables to be placed under the hammer, and his jingle-jangle jewellery melted down over a hot flame. Although, to be fair, most of these suggestions were made while the man was still alive, and mainly were references to his genitalia. As an aside to this story, I have actually written to the BBC with a serious suggestion, as a mark of good faith, that they should offer anybody wishing to trade in their tarnished Jim'll Fix It badges with a free lifetime licence. A small gesture as a mark of good faith to an innocent public who were also duped by a paedophile. How's about that then, BBC? In a week when it was announced British beer drinkers pay more in tax on their alcohol than anyone else in Europe, where in a country where 1 in 20 pubs in London are now closed, 1 pub a week disappears from our towns and villages, I like to sing a little song. In a time before wine bars, gastro pubs and microbreweries, where the only food on sale was crisps, and the only smells generating from the pub was testosterone, cigarette smoke, and the faint smell of wee. Here's a song entitled The Coup de Hell Bar. Drink round the clock, the doors never lock, the local ain't far, plumes of smoke all around, it's more London than a lounge, you leave smelling like a burned out cigar. I know the folk who reside at that local, some keep outside in their car, some bring in their bike, they drink what they like. Where? The Coup de Hell Bar. Coup de Hell, coup de hell. Now the brewery might question the beer that they sell. Coup de hell, coup de hell. But it's Suffolk and strong, you can tell by the smell. No Litlands or Tinkers and Knights of Binge drinkers, you'll find the welcome they are. In those unlikely events, the girls squat and the gents, and the men have to piss in the yard. Well, the walls that were white are now 5 shades of shite. The floor, it's as sticky as tar. And most would agree, there's a faint whiff of the wee. Where? The Coup de Hell Bar. Coup de Hell, coup de hell. Now the brewery might question the beer that they sell. Coup de Hell, coup de hell. But it's Suffolk and strong, you can tell by the smell. Now because of the fight, they stopped the quiz night. We're banned from the crib and the darts, and nobody plays pool. They broke all the cues, and the blackball's been missing since March. It takes a brave man to order food from the blackboard. Well, it's too smudged to read for a start, but now and then I might risk some out-of-date crisps. Where? The Coup de Hell Bar. Coup de Hell, coup de hell. Now the brewery might question the beer that they sell. Coup de hell, coup de hell. But it's Suffolk and strong, you can tell by the smell. At the right time of year, with a bus full of beer, we'd sing all the way to the water, pub to pub on a crawl, fish and chips on the wall, then back at top speed for last orders. But wherever you choose, the place that you booze, the King's Head, Rose and Crown or the Star, my ass is firmly anchored where me name's on me tankard. I'll stay wankered at the Coup de Hell Bar. Coup de hell, coup de hell. Tolly Cobbold might question
The beer that they sell, coup to hell, coup to hell. But it's Suffolk and strong, how can you tell? You know very well from the smell. Coup to hell.
Coup to Hell Bar. Available for download at chuck-cash.co.uk. That's chuckcash.co.uk. Thursday saw the arrest of Freddie Starr for sexual assault charges in connection with the Jimmy Savile investigation. So for those of you keeping track with your Dirty Dozen BBC bingo cards, that's now Jimmy Savile, Gary Glitter and Freddie Starr ticked off. Please stay tuned for further updates.
You're listening to Chuck Cash on the radio.
Stop it. And now it's time for your Friday teaser. If a UK student takes a GCSE and a teacher marks that GCSE using the boundaries legally and currently allowed, and then a government minister mid-term moves the goalposts, forcing markers to downgrade students' results, should Ofqual, the ombudsman of the industry for fairness in exam marking, really be blaming teachers for optimistically over-marking said exam papers? Discuss. This week's highlights on Twitter. This week I was contacted by 3 current newsreaders. Channel 4's Fatima Manji, BBC One's Rita Chakrabarti and ITV's Nina Nana. All 3 retweeted a song I posted to them earlier in the week. How many newsreaders can you count?
Chakrabarti, Zainab Badawi, Lisa Mazimba, George Alagaya, Geeta Guru Murphy, Nadia Methandal, Oligaran, Sarah Mukherjee, Christian Dynamite, poor, Majish Machindani, Anna Jana Gatkill, Fatima Manji, Nina Nana, 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 Nina Nana. Matthew Amralawala, Louisa Baldini, Emily Maitland, Kasha Madeira, Christian Guru Murphy, Fernando Liviwina, Alan Kunzberg, Sarah Fogarty, Claudia Liza Van der Boer, Benny Buskinder, Mud Moyner, Lawrence McGinty, Nina Nana, Nina Nana, Nina Nana, Nina Nana, Nina Nana, Nina Nana.
Now it's time to take a more local review of the week's news. On Monday, the Newmarket sausage achieved special status. That put it up there alongside such products as Parma ham and champagne. It's deemed that the Newmarket sausage has to be made in Newmarket, or Kirtland, or Moulton, or a couple of other villages, I can't remember all of them, and it has to contain at least 70% pork, meaning the other 30% can contain any old shit, I expect. Queen Victoria was a huge fan of the Newmarket sausage, apparently. Yeah, frozen sausage used to get her through many a long, lonely night, apparently. Tuesday, Suffolk farmer Eddie Thornley announced he paid a record sum of money for an expensive sheepdog called Midge, an 18-month-old collie. He said, "That is the most expensive sheepdog he'd ever..." Come by! He said he had tried to get the price down. Good boy. But in the end they had to settle for the grand sum of 8,400. He said for a best friend that's quite a cheap price. Clearly he's never visited a prostitute. You get all sorts for that, I tell you. I suppose. Anyway, on Wednesday, Police Commissioner candidate David Cox, the ex-CEO of Take Care Now, you know, that was the care company who was responsible for Dr. Ubani, who killed a couple. Yeah, it's a bit of a bugger he were. Now, I'd say Take Care Now is what used to be a friendly sounding gesture is probably more like a hazard warning for anybody taking up their service, I'd say. However, David Cox said he'd be good at being police commissioner because he's quite cynical and he's good at overlooking and ignoring criticism. So he's thrown his hat in the ring there. Anyway, Thursday, Mick McCarthy's announced as replacement for Paul Jewell as the Ipswich Town football manager. It was deemed that Mick McCarthy was the best manager in the game to give Ipswich Town players the kind of big bollocking that they clearly need right now. Mick McCarthy, of course, was famous for bringing Wolves up to the Premiership, just on the power and the strength of his eyebrows. It's amazing. Friday announces that Alt J, Cambridge-based indie rock band, won the Mercury Prize last night. They plan to celebrate, beating out contestants such as Richard Hawley, Plan B, Caps Lock, Tab Shift and Alt Control Delete. They said they're not going to hold with this Mercury Prize winning curse that bands that win it disappear into obscurity, like the ones that won it last year. I can't quite remember who that were. That was your local news week in review.
You're listening to Chuck Cash on the radio.
Stop it. Incidentally, anyone counting the newsreaders in the newsreader song, the answer was 26. That's 26. And for those of you playing along with the BBC Dirty Dozen Bingo, Gary Glitter, Jimmy Savile and Freddie Starr are all ticked off. Well, listeners, we've come to the end of our first 30 minutes together on the Chuck Cash Radio Show. I very much hope you've enjoyed tonight's entertainment and that you'll tune in again next week. Take care. Goodbye for now. Night.